Hi everyone, welcome and thanks for joining us for this special live stream where we will present you the team and the new members of this team for Colonized Mars. So if it's your first time with us, I'm Stephanie, the community manager, and without further ado, I will introduce the person that everyone is waiting for, and it is Hunter. Hi.
Hey everyone. Thanks for joining, guys.
You will be the first one to start by presenting us a few things. So I will leave you on the stage and we are listening.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks again everyone for joining. We're excited to give a little bit of an update and share some of the team members that have been working super hard on the project. But before we get into it, I wanted to just kind of revisit some of the reasons the project was started and kind of walk through the vision. So yeah, if you can go to the next slide. Yeah, basically, we'll start off with just why colonize Mars? Why did we start this project? And what's the reason for it? So really it comes down to this belief that humanity, our future is multiplanetary, and that's really the starting belief. And I think that going to Mars is going to be one of the most important undertakings of our lifetime. I think it's going to change science. There's going to be a lot of discoveries that'll be made that people have been wondering about for hundreds of years. To be able to study a planet that's similar in its origin as Earth can be kind of groundbreaking. And also it's going to inspire a lot of young people. Just imagine, telling kids in school, learn your science and you can become an explorer of a new planet. That's really what excites me about Mars. It's also going to be a lot of innovation is going to come out of being on Mars, and that's some of the gameplay that we're looking to add is around innovation as well. So, for me personally, like this idea of being able to contribute to helping people get inspired about going to Mars is a really good reason to get up in the morning. And so how does Colonize Mars contribute to make this happen? Well, if you think about it just at a super high level, there's basically like two components, oversimplified, but two major components to getting to Mars. The first one, of course, is you need a transportation system. And, thankfully there's great agencies and companies that are working on systems for this. But the other thing that's really important is we need for people to want to go there. And if you go to the next slide, Stephanie, that's why our vision is really to catalyze the will of humanity to become multiplanetary, because it's super important that more and more people have this shared dream of going to Mars. And one of the biggest problems that I see is that the comprehensive end-to-end plan for creating a self-sustaining city for Mars hasn't really been visualized yet. And we think that, we want to tackle this problem of creating a comprehensive plan from mission 1 all the way to a self-sustaining city and beyond. And that's really what excites us a lot about this project. So we're designing, everything in-house, from the technology to the spacesuits to the materials that we're using and some of the construction techniques and how that plays into the resource management and some of the science of creating a colony. And we hope that this way of visualizing it really inspires people and results in more and more people learning about Mars and some of the science behind it. And if you go to the next slide. So what we're working on day to day, as most of you know, is we're working on telling this story in a accurate way, in a visually compelling way, so that ultimately we're inspiring people to explore more. If we can get a few more people interested in pursuing aerospace or astronautics as a career, or if we can get more people learning about the science or talking about it, that's a success to us. And so that's really why our mission is this. And just to give you an example of how this has actually happened in another industry. So, back in like 1992, a great sci-fi author, Neil Stephenson, wrote the book Snow Crash. And in it, 3D avatars interact in a virtual world. And nowadays you see the metaverse, basically Snow Crash coined the term the metaverse. And it was a great story. And it's really interesting to see how that language has proliferated into the tech industry now. And you see companies and projects really utilizing that technology and making it a reality. And so if you go to the next slide, so that's why, a compelling story can really be the vehicle for new realities. And we believe that the story, like the one that we're creating, can basically have the ability to inspire millions of people and focus their will around making the mission to Mars a reality. So that's really what excites us. That's the reason the project started. And I guess with that, maybe we can jump into meeting a little bit of the team.
Yes, of course. So right now, as Hunter said, we will now meet members of the team. And I will ask a few questions to each of them so you get to know them a little bit better. And we will start with Andy for the design. So you have the full list of who we will see today. And so Andy, please join us. Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great, and you?
Fine, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, so Andy, could you please introduce yourself and go over your background and tell everyone who you are so they can get to know you better?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm Andres Sentis, Andy, a graphic designer from Buenos Aires, Argentina, at the south of the globe. I'm, of course, big fan of Lionel Messi and drink a lot of mate. So, well, at the age of 12, I designed my first web on front page. Imagine the result. But from that day, I know that graphic design was my passion. So I started to study and work a lot as a freelancer. I had some tech startups, and finally I founded my agency. Under Agency is a boutique where we do product design, UX, UI, branding, and well. So that is a very resume way of my background.
Okay, and tell us more about your team.
Oh yes, I work with Victoria and Iñaki. They are very super talented designers. They are also scary workaholic like me. So I enjoy a lot of working with people that you have like a lot of feedback all the time. We think on design every time. Our chats are about design, so it's a kind of boring thing if you are not a designer. So with us. So well, Vicky, for example, is behind the icon designs from the future UI, and also she do a lot of graphic design art for the game. And Iñaki is a super UX UI designer, so he is behind many of the future new components and from the design system of the new platform. We are seeing now some of the future designs. So it's so for me it's a pleasure to work with them.
Yes, and indeed the graphics looks great. So we have one on screen right now, and I will show another one. Oh. And so how exactly does your team do that? What is your process? How much time does it take? Could you tell us?
Yes, thank you for your words. So we try to iterate a lot. So for me, the secret of achieve a good result is to have a good process and iterate as many times as you can for the same work. Also, Hunters help us a lot of giving his feedback, and we work together. We use a tool Figma that is allow us to work like collaborative in the same virtual room. So that is awesome for the brainstorming and working together with ideas. Of course, this is a project that needs to move super fast and has a fast delivery. So many times we work isolated. We design tasks for each member of the team. Vicky works in one thing, Iñaki another thing, and me another thing. So and that's why we are like crazy sending new ideas and new stuff to the team.
Yeah, and what's pretty cool is the team is, I think we're fully remote. So we are all around the world. Andy and his team, of course, are on a similar time zone to me and on the East Coast. So yeah, it's fun to collaborate. And the process pretty much started with, some sketches, and we went all the way through the entire UX flow, created all of the different wireframes. Stephanie's been helping with some testing for users to make sure that we're giving something to the community that's on par with expectations. So yeah, thanks, Andy. It's been an awesome time collaborating with you and your team.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Yeah, maybe one last question.
Okay.
What excites you the most about participating to the project?
Okay, well, yes. For me, working in this project, I know it maybe sound big, but it's a kind of dream. I was born in the 90s, so as many children in the 90s, we were raised by video games. So seeing myself working on a video game is is unbelievable. Sorry. So I'm super excited to be here, and of course, in this team there are really good, talented people. So I learn a lot of every day.
Thanks a lot. So now we will go to Tom, that most people already know, and that he will present us the points about the gameplay. And so I have a few nice questions for you too, Tom, and let's join us. Hi.
Hello, everyone. Hi.
Hi. So Tom, people already know you in the community, so I will not ask you to introduce yourself, but I will ask you, what is gameplay design, and how do you approach that? How do you approach your role in the project?
So what is gameplay design? For me, it's kind of pulling all the aspects of a project together into kind of a cohesive unit that kind of engages the players, short term, medium term, long term. It's not just about kind of the quick wins. It's keeping people engaged, not just hooking them in. And it's also catering for the different types of players that we have, especially with the kind of design work and the features that we're looking at doing now. NFT game design, it's something slightly different, slightly new. Most games, if you design it and it's not particularly well kind of balanced, you just go, we'll release a patch, an update next week and fix it. Can't really do that when everything's tied to money. So it's taking a lot of extra care and attention and testing to make sure that the design kind of is solid and balanced. So my approach to game design would be, I kind of like think up new features that work within the kind of the mechanics of blockchains and the scope of the project. But yeah, as they say, there's nothing new under the sun. So once I've kind of come up with those initial ideas, I do go and research, see what other projects have done around it, kind of take some of their ideas, iterate on mine, improve my ideas, sometimes scrap them, start over again as it needs to be. I do have a kind of a colleague, Sam, who is not available today. Otherwise, he'd be on this call too. But yeah, so we kind of bounce ideas off each other, spend a lot of time kind of just talking to each other. Any time of the day, just kind of go, oh, what about this? What about that? And then we'll kind of dig into it. Once we're happy with that, then we crack on with the prototyping and simulating to determine, if they're balanced, if they're feasible, if it works, if it's fun, if it's enjoyable. And final step, after all of that, is just to keep tweaking them until it's balanced, I guess. Yeah. Because it's NFTs, it's real money. There's always that extra few steps to kind of go in and just to make sure that things are things are right.
Okay. So, well, that already answered in part, I guess, the question I had that was about the challenges you faced when designing the economy. It's the balance, of course.
Yeah, in one word, balance. Yeah. In this project, balancing realism. So balancing realism versus entertainment. In reality, a dust storm on Mars can last for weeks. And how do we incorporate that into the game in a kind of realistic yet fun way that doesn't lock people inside their inflatable sleeping pods for weeks on end and not being able to do anything? So yeah, I think we've come up with a good middle ground for that, and interested to see how that plays out. Balancing realism versus simplicity is another factor. For example, researching the technical spec on the greenhouses, like the food requirements of astronauts, looking at the different crop types that are needed, what kind of nutrients they provide, in which yields and what ratio. That is a lot of different products and food types and everything to incorporate into gameplay. So for simplicity, we've kind of lumped it together under food for now. But that's the sort of kind of depth we're going into to find all the information in the first place, to then work out how we can make a game out of it. And the last one, if I stick with a kind of the food analogies, would be balancing realism versus the various different item types. We've got inflatable greenhouses at the moment. They're small, support a couple of astronauts. We are going to have much larger greenhouses coming forward. Sneak peek info. And yes, they'll give some more food, but they won't give like massively amounts more food. They'll have to kind of offset that with kind of costs of kind of growing that. Maybe they're going to be more less resistant to hazards because of their size. And so it's trying to kind of balance the realism of how much this item would actually produce versus gameplay of, you can't have one greenhouse that can feed one person and another greenhouse that can feed 1,000. So it's kind of getting in between.
Whoa, lots of calculation, I feel. Okay, so one more question. What are you most excited about in the very near future pertaining to the game?
Very tough question, that one. I know you said near future, but long term, the project as a whole, for me, I love the vision. I love what it's aiming to do. The people on board, and all the features and stuff that the players don't know about yet. They really excite me. Can't wait to be able to kind of start announcing some of those. Short term stuff that I've worked on, it would be the resource chain in particular. I can't wait to see how the players' different strategies evolve around that, and how they adapt to kind of their strategies being impacted by hazards. And to see if my calculations and balance is even remotely right. That excites and scares me. And the other thing, if it's not the stuff that I've directly worked on, then the most interesting and exciting aspect coming on is the stuff that Sean and his team are working on.
I was going to say should, but Sean arrived just later, so it's okay. And that's a new one for you all. Someone you've never met, you've never heard of, and in a new category, which is story. And then I introduce you to Sean. Hi.
Hi, Stephanie. Hey, folks playing the game. It's such a pleasure to be here.
So Sean, please introduce yourself and tell us what is your background, your qualification for this story field.
I super wanted to go to space when I was 9. That's the first thing. Grew up in Canada, became a science fiction and fantasy writer. I've published 12 science fiction and fantasy books. I've been nominated for the Nebula a couple of times. I've won the World Fantasy Award. And then in 2000, I was bitten by a radioactive Spielberg, and I was tapped to be the lead writer on what is now known as the world's first ARG, or alternate reality game, which basically is crossing writing a science fiction book with running a murder mystery dinner party for 1 million people online. So this kind of crazy internet storytelling was a new thing, and a new thing for me, and I was very lucky to be part of it. But it was also quite electrifying to be storytelling with a community of that size. And you can imagine anyone out there who's done role-playing games or the like, how vivid it is to not only read a story or see it in a movie, to be part of it yourself. So I'll wrap this up in a sec. But the nicest thing that ever happens to me when I publish a book is that I get a nice review or I win an award. On some of the ARGs, on each of the big ones, I've been invited to a wedding because people met and fell in love, and it was important enough to them that they wanted the people who made the game to be at their wedding. That's a different kind of involvement. So once you've experienced that kind of storytelling, it's hard not to want to do it again.
Wow.
Went on have an Emmy Award for interactive television, whatever the hell that means, and I've sort of made a career in this kind of dancing with audiences storytelling thing.
Wow. Well, my next question was going to ask if there was anything the community might have heard of what you did, but you've already said so much. Is there something else that you would like to say to?
Well, I guess depending on how many older gamers there are in your audience, I was the lead writer along with Maureen McHugh on a project called I Love Bees for Halo 2, and Year Zero for 9 Inch Nails. So if anyone out there has participated in either of those, we did writing on that. And as a novelist, I would love to list all of my very, very important and prestigious novels, but the odds are higher that someone out there has read Yoda, Dark Rendezvous, the only Star Wars book laser focused on Yoda. And I will be accepting my royalty checks for Baby Yoda idea anytime now, Lucas. Just, I'm by the mailbox.
So, and what is the story behind you working on Colonized Mars?
So, at the very beginning, Hunter mentioned that the concept of the metaverse was coined by the science fiction writer Neal Stephenson. Neal Stephenson is the friend of mine who was asked to be the lead writer on the first ARG and said, "Hey, thanks, busy, but I have a broke friend," which is how I got that gig. And similarly, Neal was the chief futurist for Magic Leap, and asked me to come on board, which is where I met Hunter. And Hunter and I started talking years ago when we were both at Magic Leap about some fun kind of storytelling you could do to make a vision of the future come to life. And so when Hunter started this thing, he eventually reached out and said, hey, all those things we could never do in a big company, we can do them now. So I was super excited and honored to be asked.
Yeah, and it's a fun subject too. I mean, Mars, I know you have some connections to the industry as well.
Everyone on my story team, and depending on how you count, there are either 5 or 6 of us in some capacity. We all love science fiction. We all grew up with space and with those kind of dreams. We're Star Trek fans. We're all of those things. And then in my family, my dad was a JPL ambassador for the Cassini mission, and is arguably one of the 2 or 3 most important astrobiologists. So if you want to know what life might be like on Enceladus and what the conditions are that would produce the biochemical gradients necessary to support various kinds of life throughout the solar system, he's that guy. So we have it's not only part of my imagination, but part of kind of the family business is reaching for the stars. So it's lovely to be able to have a chance to do that with you guys.
Yeah, I guess that covers in part what my last question was about, which was what excites you the most about participating to the project?
It's a combination of things. I love the vision. I love the positivity and the aspiration of it, and the chance to create a story not only with Hunter and his team, but with the players watching this stream. In one sense, what Hunter is trying to do is simulate what it would be like to create a new world. We're going to do the same in the story. We're going to try to make something that we are all part of and we are all building together, and that is rich and emotional and aspirational and positive, and dramatic because it's story. And the chance to build that together with the kinds of people both on Hunter's side of the curtain and you guys watching, that's the thing that is the most exciting to me.
Wow, great. So thanks, Sean. And we will know. So thanks for joining us. Now I will let you go. Go your way.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks.
And we will now go to the marketing with Liz, but wait. It seems like I'm receiving some kind of word transmission. I wonder what that is. Did you hear that? Okay, so that's weird. Liz, do you hear that?
I did. I think someone's trying to send a message, but it's gone now. So
That's weird.
yeah.
So, let's continue. Okay.
Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Hunter. Hello, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are from the world right now. Hello.
Hello. So, Liz, tell us about your team and you, and do you have any previous venture in crypto and NFT to tell us about?
All right. Okay. So my name is Lizelle, born and raised in the Philippines, but currently residing in Australia. I am a digital producer and a Scrum Master, and I have been in marketing for over a decade now. I started when I was 17. And I'm here on behalf of my team, Apex Digital. So Apex Digital is an agile marketing agency. We are an experienced team with a background in branding, social media, digital marketing, community management, I would say gaming as well, and trading. And most of my team were based in the Philippines, and we're actually composed of Hannah, who is one of our mission control and game masters. She is our content director. We've got Pau, our accounts director, Angela, our strategy director, and Marielle, our creative director. And I guess amongst all of us, we have a wide exposure to different play to earn games as gamers and investors. And in the past year, we just really deep dived into crypto space and NFT research and marketing. Initially for our own good, and for our own respective communities and guilds to evaluate the project sustainability and to drive its growth. But then we decided to come together as a team and join forces and thought, why not? So we were gamers and players before we are actually marketers. That has always been the mindset. So we understand the purchasing habits and trends in the space, And in addition to that, we are also traders. So we have been trading the markets as well as crypto, and we understand the technical side of things. So in marketing, specifically for newer industries such as NFT and crypto, it's unique. The factors such as high market volatility and the newness of this technology, it can offer unique challenges, and it must be taken care of. So our experience, I guess, as consumers or gamers, and NFT investors and marketers and traders drives that ability to develop an effective strategy for projects such as Colonize Mars. So I hope we do bring that to the project, and we are really really excited. But I guess I also want to mention that one of our group's core values as a team is passion and growth. And because we know that crypto and NFT space, it's a fast paced industry. And so anyone who claims that they have decoded the crypto NFT marketing is straight up lying to you. So we make it to a point wherein we keep an open mind, we learn new things, and we make sure that we have a constant pulse with the current trends, that we can adapt to the shifts in the market to stay relevant, which is really, really important. And we view each step in collaboration with Hunter, closely with Sean, and with the community. Each of these steps, it is a learning opportunity for us to become more agile. So yeah.
Yeah, it's great because we have, I mean, the space is such a unique place for marketing, and there's things that we're learning every day, and it's great to have your team's experience specifically within, crypto, NFTs, and play to earn. And I'm learning a lot. Everyone on the team's learning, and we're having a good time.
Yes, same.
That's true. And so one more question, more specific. What advantages do you believe Colonized Mars may have over other projects?
Okay. So I guess what gravitated us to really collaborate with Colonize Mars is the very apparent passion and commitment of the team behind it. We felt this from the get-go during a first meeting, during a first brainstorming in Huddle. And the vision of the project has always been very clear for us since the very beginning. It is the closest to reality experience of living and thriving in Mars. And that in itself is a huge advantage over other projects. All these dedication and passion, you can see it and feel it to the very, very, little details of the game, the specifications of the tires of the rovers, the clothes on the suits of the astronauts, the structural design and integrity of the inflatable greenhouse. On the surveys, if you're a gamer, you will say this is such a fun game to play for everyone. But if you look a little bit closer, it's more than that. It's a blueprint that explorers can possibly use in their future explorations of the Red Planet. And we are marketers and we love great brands. And Colonize Mars is a brand that surrounds quality and such a strong vision. You can see it with the depth of the thinking in all aspects of the game, as I mentioned. And I think above all of that, Colonize Mars has a great story. And it's a story or a dream for most of us, as Andy mentioned, and as what we have heard from Sean as well. Probably at some point in our lives, one of you probably said, I want to become an astronaut, or I want to go to outer space, or I want to go and explore Mars, right? And for some people who have grown into adults, most of us, that's a dream that many are not yet able to explore yet. And brands like these really stand out because they fill the void between what is real and what is your imagined reality or your dream, right? And the chief cornerstone of these great brands is the community. It's each and every one of us and the person that you and I ought to become. So Rare is a game that holds a strong vision like this, with a multi-year roadmap and a team that has the ability, the talent, the experience, and really the passion, to work hard and to go the extra mile to make it a reality for us. So I guess Colonize Mars takes us closer to that childhood dream. So, and the best part is that we're just getting started. So yeah, I think that's what makes it really, really advantageous over other projects.
Totally agree. 100%. And yes, so thank a lot, Liesl. And then I will say you goodbye for now, and we will go to the next domain that we will develop for you, and we will present someone, we will present the person responsible for it, which is Christian. So Christian, you can join us now. Hi.
Hey everyone, nice to meet you. Hey Stephanie.
So could you please introduce yourself like everyone else before, your previous experience and your role in the project in Colonized Mars development?
Yeah, so I started 11 years ago as a QA actually, then opened my startup company on QA, but slowly started migrating towards project management. I'm a hands-on type of person, so I always like being hands-on, and thus many years later, since I started my career in IT, I've somehow landed on Colonized Mars. Some may say by chance, but it's a pleasure, and it's actually a really fun thing to be here. It's so much things going on, and I'm going to steal one of the questions that you've put to the speakers before me. One of the coolest things for me as a project manager on this project is that I get to see and be hands-on on all the new features, mostly before anyone else. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, and Christian, you've been with us pretty much since we started the development team. So you've seen us grow, and yeah, I mean, maybe tell everyone a little bit more about the team and who's on it and some of the experiences.
Yeah, well, the team, if I can count, well, we have now 6 developers, and the team is constantly growing. That's one of the key things on the project. It's been a lot of added value and a lot of added knowledge to the table. One important thing to mention is that I think that the development branch has one of the most exciting roles. It brings all the designs, all the vision, the concepts, the story, everything. It brings it to life. And working with the developers is awesome. Their roles are well defined, back and front end, DevOps, and they are hard workers and they do an amazing job. Not sure if I should add anything to it. Like we can go into the technical details, but I don't think it's the case.
Okay. So maybe just one thing I'm wondering about, because maybe it's because I'm not in the field, but that game has so many interlinked features and pieces. How do you manage to keep everything moving together?
Yeah, well, nothing is too big of a challenge if you're engaged in what you're doing and if you like what you're doing, right? We have tools for that in project management, so yeah, it's fairly simple to keep track of everything. But I think that the best answer to your question is that the entire Colonize Mars team, all the branches of it, I'm talking design, development, marketing, game development, all the departments, we have really, really great communication. So putting everything head to head and tracking everything that's going on is just making our lives so much easier.
Okay. So thanks a lot, Christian.
Thank you. Bye.
So next one, which is community. Well, I'm not gonna ask myself question, I guess, but I'm gonna do like everyone and just tell you a little bit about where I come from with the game and what excites me and what I really like in it. And then, yes, so my story behind arriving as community manager in the game is that I started as a player. So I was just participating into the Telegram and then into the Discord. And I raised through the rank and I became what Sean called a filthy pro, a pro coming from the fandom, from the fan base. And that has been absolutely wonderful. That's probably the job I like the most in my career right now. And what excites me a lot is, like Liesl and others said, it was a dream. It's becoming a little bit cheesy to say it was my dream to colonize Mars. No, to me, more precise, my dream was to settle another planet. And Mars is the closest one, the most convenient one, the only one where there is a little chance. Yeah, for years I thought that there was no chance anyway. And so Colonize Mars and that game was, it's the closest I can come to that dream right now. And one thing I really like more about the community part, and that was also hinted to previously by Hunter, I think, is that we do involve the community in the evolution of the game. So there is the channel about the suggestion channel in the Discord. There is the testers that from the community to test things when we have new features. And I have recently had a few interviews and panels with some players to test some parts of the new UI, and we have gotten a lot of very good feedback, very interesting questions also, and that's really great to work with you all. I love you guys. So sorry, that's far too cheesy. And no, it's recorded, so it will be on YouTube forever. Okay, let's go to the next part, which is art, and that will be for you, Hunter, again. Just a presentation this time, no question.
Yeah, of course. I figured I'd just kind of walk through a couple of the different things we're working on the art team. It's led by Raymond and his team. He has a few 3D artists on the crew, as well as concept artists and animation help, sound design, etc. So this is a high resolution image of the surface of Mars, and you can kind of see some of the features. The rectangle there is actually where we're putting the first colony. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see that this is really our the geometry of our game map. So the point here is really that we feel like it's really important for us to model the game experience after the terrain on Mars. And so we're doing some pretty cool techniques to grab the textures and the 3D mesh for the actual game experience, along with some other really interesting things that we'll reveal later on, probably in the following months. You can go to the next slide. And here's just like one of the assets we're working on. This is our one of our astronauts, and you can kind of see the level of detail that the team's getting to in terms of the quality of the textures. And of course, these astronaut suits are designed by us. There's different layers to them that correspond to materials and functions. We're using a mechanical counterpressure base system, and so a lot of work has been going into this, getting all of the assets ready for various gameplay features. And the next slide actually shows also some of the architectural work that's being done on some of the larger features of the colony. This is one of my favorites that we've done so far. And of course, it's a little bit further along in the colony development. And as I mentioned before, we're really focused on how can we make a self-sustaining city for Mars, which includes all of the subsystems, all of the infrastructure, power systems. In this case, it's ice mining, and incorporating things like 3D printing and modular design, some interesting ways to do thermodynamics, and also insulation and various other techniques to create systems that will actually work. And so, yeah, this is really what is fun to me, getting into the details of all the design. We have an awesome architect on the team who's really spearheading a lot of the 3D design of our objects and transitioning those into game assets and various other artwork that will be represented in the game is really fun. So wanted to just show a sneak peek of some of the stuff that we're working on, and we'll definitely be giving more and more as we go into the gameplay features. So yeah, I think that's it. And thank you everyone for joining us. I hope it's fun to hear a little bit more from some of the key members on the team and the things that they're working on and the various elements that make the game what it is.
Yeah, and thank you again, and thank you to Hunter. And I'm still wondering about that strange message kind of message we received in the middle of the stream. So if someone in the chat, in the community, understand or find what it means and can post it in the community giveaway channel, that could be a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Who knows?
Who knows? So thank you everyone for being with us for this almost 50 minutes, and that was absolutely great. And we wish you a good morning, afternoon, night, midday, and see you in the Discord and in Telegram in a few minutes. Bye-bye.
See ya.